Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. Hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things Giants. Now this week we're doing a little bit of a history rewind where we're going back and talking about some of the former Giants legends who made the Giants franchise what it is today. Yesterday we talked about Phil Simms. Today we are going to talk about Lawrence Taylor. But before we talk about Lawrence Taylor, I want to talk about just two quick updates that I've seen about the Giants that I wanted to discuss. The first one is the groups of Giants players that have been working out together this month and have been seen kind of doing bonding events, if you will, together. So let's go ahead and discuss. The first group is this: Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, the three quarterbacks. Then we've got some tight ends in here: Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson. We've got running back Turbo Miller. And then wide receiver Bryce Ford Wheaton, along with Jalen Hyatt and a few other players that have all been together in San Diego. And they were actually spotted together on Instagram last night at the Padres game. So I think it's just interesting to kind of see the different groups and who gravitates towards each other. I really like that all of the quarterbacks are sticking together, especially for someone like Jackson Dart, who's really just kind of learning the ropes as a rookie and has a lot to learn. I think the more time that he spends with someone like Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and he learns how they prepare and how they take care of their bodies in the offseason, what they're doing from, mini camp until training camp. I think all that stuff is really important and valuable for young guys. So the fact that Jackson Dart is right in there with all of them, I love. And the same thing goes for Jalen Hyatt. I love that he's spending a lot of time with Russell Wilson. I think it's really important that he spends time, of course, with the quarterbacks, but also with guys who are just known to be vocal leaders, like a Jameis Winston, like a Russell Wilson. I think that's all going to be really important for him as he continues to grow. And I love just seeing these different groups together. It's always fun to kind of see what they're up to on Instagram. So this has been one group that we have definitely seen together. The next one is Dexter Lawrence, Darius Alexander, and Jordan Riley with their coach, Mark Hall, down at Clemson. Now, Dexter Lawrence, we know, is a Clemson alum. I'm a Gamecock alum, so I don't like Clemson, but I make an exception for Dexter Lawrence because he is Dexter Lawrence. But I like that those three guys are getting some work in together with their coach down at Clemson, taking advantage of some time in the offseason. And then the last one, which I thought was interesting, is Tyler Nubin working out with former New York Giant Julian Love, who so many of us, I know, love. I was devastated when the Giants didn't re-sign him. And then, of course, then they didn't re-sign McKinney. I was like, come on, give us one of the good safeties that we loved on this team. So that was a bummer with the way that all of that went down. But it does seem like a lot of the current Giants players still have good relationships with former Giants players. And I think that's always important, that they can maintain a level of professionalism and continue to be friendly with each other, regardless of obviously how things went down in the offseason. So stay tuned. I'll keep reporting on any of those other groups as we see them. I have seen Malik Neighbors here and there. He seems to be, I think I saw him with Jaden Daniels. I know he talks about Jaden Daniels all the time. They are besties. I also saw that I think he got a new tattoo for Kyron Lacey. So he definitely seems like he's still in the middle of the grief after the sudden death of his friend and former LSU wide receiver, Kyron Lacey. So he seems to kind of be doing his own thing a little bit, but he was at Fanatics Fest and things like that. So curious to see where he ends up over the next month or so. So with that being said, I want to talk about the tight ends, because we know that a few of them went to Tight End University, which is run by Travis Kelce, Greg Olsen, and George Kittle. And they created it a couple of years ago to just kind of get all the tight ends together and, kind of see what else they could do and help them improve and learn and things like that. So this is what Thomas Fidone said after he came back from Tight End University. He said, quote, "I got some pretty cool compliments from Kelce just out of the blue, which was pretty cool. He told me I was extremely athletic and moved extremely well. He told me that my top of routes were really good. He didn't say it like that, but he said it. So just being able to hear that from him was really cool. I thought it was awesome being able to just connect and make connections with all of the guys around there." End quote, which is also something that the three guys mentioned who started Tight End University was they just wanted to start making connections, especially for some of the younger guys, just give them the opportunity to be around some veterans, pick their brain, ask questions, again, see how they train their bodies, what they do in the offseason, things like that. It is helpful to kind of watch and learn from these guys. The last quote that I have from Fidone is this, quote, "Being able to meet with them, work out with them, you get different input from everyone and kind of see how they do things differently, because each tight end is different and has different skill sets and strong suits and stuff like that. It's fun to be able to learn from them," end quote. The thing that I thought was interesting and that I love that he mentioned is the fact that Travis Kelce said that Fedoni is athletic and moves very well. We know that Fedoni had 2 ACL injuries to the same knee in college, and that obviously was a concern for him coming out. It's probably one of the reasons why he didn't get drafted as high as he could have been if he was healthy and things like that. So I do think that makes a big difference, and I'm sure for him it must be an amazing confidence boost to hear from someone like Travis Kelce, who's going to go down as one of the greatest tight ends in the NFL, that, you know, he can compliment him and still notices that he's athletic and didn't lose a beat and everything after coming back from these 2 injuries. All right, let's switch gears. We talk about the greatest tight ends. We have to talk about the greatest player to ever play football, and that is none other than linebacker Lawrence Taylor. So I know that everyone knows who Lawrence Taylor is, but for all of the young people, if you didn't really get to watch Lawrence Taylor, I'm sure that you've seen some sort of clips from him. But from what I know about the people who watched him week in and week out, for the coaches who worked with him, he was just a different breed, just not normal compared to every other football player to come out of college and to play in the NFL. And let me give you some of his accolades that back that up, because it's absurd. He played in the NFL from 1981 to 1993. Okay, 13 years in the league. 13 years. He was a 10-time Pro Bowler, an 8-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 1986 AP MVP. He's obviously a Hall of Famer. He is the 1986 Pro Football Writers of America MVP. He was the Hall of Fame All 1980s team. A decade of football. Lawrence Taylor was on that list, obviously. 3-time AP Defensive Player of the Year, 1981 Defensive Rookie of the Year, 1986 Burt Bell Award, 1986 SN Player of the Year, and then 3 times UPI Defensive Player of the Year. Okay? The guy was a monster. From 1981 to 1984, his first 4 years in the NFL, he was the Defensive Player of the Year 4 years in a row. That is unheard of. Absolutely unheard of, insane behavior. And this was all before the Giants even won the Super Bowl. So he came out, the 1983, we talked about this yesterday, Phil Simms, not really a great year. These were the years, the early years of Lawrence Taylor. He came in and is telling Phil Simms, yo, get your shit together, bro. Come on, I'm doing my job. You got to do your job if you want to win. So this is all on a team that is not very good compared to what they were when they were winning Super Bowls, and he's Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. And I know we've talked about this with Dexter Lawrence, and we all make jokes like Giants players never get the credit they deserve because they're all on losing teams. Not Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor got the credit that he so well deserved. The guy is an absolute freak show. Okay, so now let's go through his stats because that was only the beginning. He had 132.5 throughout his career, including 9.5 that were not officially recorded because they didn't officially start recording sacks until, I don't exactly know what year it is, but it wasn't until Lawrence Taylor was in the league already. So think about that. So he had 9.5 sacks that were not even recorded. And then they started recording and this guy goes off. So in 12 years, 132.5 sacks. Again, in 1981, he had 9.5, which weren't recorded. So first year in the league, he has 9.5 wins Defensive Player of the Year. He had over 1,000 tackles, almost 1,100, 33 forced fumbles, 10 fumble recoveries, and 9 interceptions. In 1986, the year that they won the Super Bowl, he had a career high 20.5 sacks and was named the MVP of the NFL. He's the only defensive player to win the award unanimously. Think about that. Last year's Josh Allen. The last few years, it's been quarterbacks outside of Christian McCaffrey, who won it one year. How rare is it to have a defensive player unanimously win the NFL MVP? Literally unheard of. Lawrence Taylor is the guy who did it. Just an absolute beast. And my favorite thing about Lawrence Taylor is that the way that other people talk about him, because Bill Belichick, who we all know, we all watched him, right? As the coach of the Patriots. We all watched him. He doesn't praise anyone. He doesn't, he's very cautious to the media. But I have seen countless interviews when he was with the Giants where he gushed about Lawrence Taylor. So much so, this is my favorite Lawrence Taylor story, I think. And if you guys have Lawrence Taylor stories, share them in the comments. I can't wait to read them because, like Phil Simms, the stories from the 80s and 90s, they're just different. It just was a different time and everything about it was different. Bill Belichick was quoted as saying, when he was the defensive coordinator, that it doesn't matter what time Lawrence Taylor showed up to practice, the meeting did not start until Lawrence Taylor was that. This is from Bill Belichick, who does not give a shit, seemingly, about anyone. And it's always like the Patriot way. It's my way or the highway. I run the meetings and I do this. And you've heard even guys like Aaron Hernandez. You've heard Julian Edelman, Tom Brady. Like, how many different Patriots talk about the fact that, oh, it was always Bill Belichick. It was his way or the highway. And, even talking about Tom Brady, always said he was a great football player and whatnot. The things that he said about Lawrence Taylor were just different. The way that he gushed about him, the fact that he said he didn't start meetings until he got there, the fact that he basically was the only one who essentially never got yelled at by Bill Parcells, and Bill Parcells was screaming at every other player on the field. It's just unbelievable what he did for the NFL, what he's done for young players who want to be linebackers. He really has done, from a football perspective, I won't talk about what he's done off the field because it's not great. The stuff that he's done on the field is really legendary, and he is known as the GOAT. He is the greatest football player to ever do it. He's especially the greatest defensive player. Obviously, as time changes and the NFL continues to go on, and guys like Patrick Mahomes and unfortunately Tom Brady and whatnot, as these guys continue to do what they do in the league, I do think that LT is always going to stand and he's always going to be the greatest defensive player of all time. And I hope he never gets dethroned from the greatest player of all time. But his stats, he was just a game wrecker. Everything he did on the field was unbelievable. And I think about this a lot from Abdul Carter, is Abdul Carter is going to have a guy like Lawrence Taylor mentoring him on the football field. And Abdul Carter already has it. He already has the quickness, the speed, the capabilities, the rush, the pass moves, like the linebacker capabilities. Like, he already has everything. And if you have someone like Lawrence Taylor that can help you off the field, if you have any sort of questions or you want to work one-on-one or you want to go through the playbook, whatever, to have a guy like Lawrence Taylor be able to do that is unbelievable. That is the type of mentorship and things that I think make that generation of the 80s to the 90s New York Giants team so different, is that they were built different, they played differently, they were unbelievable. So I think that Lawrence Taylor is going to be fantastic in helping Abdul Carter grow. I love that they already have this like bantery type of relationship, and I really hope that he can help Carter. If Abdul Carter is 50% as good as Lawrence Taylor is, we are going to have a hell of a lot of fun watching this guy. And I hope that he can, make up for the fact that we didn't get Micah Parsons, which everyone said at the time was the second coming of LT. If Lawrence Taylor can be like that, I think it will right the ship. But I think it'll also be for someone like me and someone like the younger generations who didn't get to see Lawrence Taylor live. I think it might be the closest thing that we could get to kind of reliving that. And I hope that for all the people who got to watch Lawrence Taylor, I hope that we see little bits and pieces of LT in Abdul Carter, and that would really make the Giants fun to watch and good again. So I love Lawrence Taylor. He's obviously an iconic New York Giant. He's an epic NFL player, obviously the greatest of all time. And, if you're ever bored, go back and watch LT highlights because I promise it'll make your day better. So stay tuned because we are going to get into more legendary players tomorrow.